"I'll be gentle with you," said the giant rancher to the black woman beaten for giving birth to a girl. The baby's cry pierced the morning air as Althea Green clutched her newborn daughter against her chest. 3 days had passed since the difficult birth, and her body still ached from the ordeal. The cramped cabin felt smaller than ever as she tried to find comfort on the thin mattress. Heavy boots thundered across the wooden porch. Harlan Thorne burst through the door without knocking, his foreman trailing behind like a loyal hound. Dust swirled in the doorway as the two men filled the small space with their presence. Thorne's eyes fell on the infant wrapped in faded cotton. His face twisted with disgust. The baby was small, delicate, and undeniably female. Another mouth to feed with no promise of strong hands for his fields. 3 weeks of lost work, Thorne spat. And for what? A girl who will never pull her weight. Althea pulled her daughter closer. Her voice came out weak but steady. "She's just been born. I'll be back to work soon enough." Thorne's hand struck her cheek with a sharp crack. The baby startled and began crying again. Althea's head snapped to the side, but she held tight to her child. "You've got 3 days to clear out," Thorne declared. "I won't feed useless mouths on my land." He grabbed Althea's few belongings and hurled them outside. A worn dress landed in the dirt. A small wooden box containing her mother's letters scattered its contents across the ground. The baby's only blanket caught on a fence post and tore. Althea stumbled outside, still weak from childbirth. The autumn wind cut through her thin clothing as she knelt to gather her scattered possessions. Other workers watched from a distance but dared not interfere. Thorne owned everything for miles around. A shadow fell across the ground beside her. Boots appeared in her vision, larger than any she had ever seen. Althea looked up to find a man of enormous height standing quietly nearby. Josiah Brooks towered over her like a gentle mountain. "I'll be gentle with you," he said softly. The townspeople who had gathered to watch began murmuring among themselves. Some backed away nervously. Others craned their necks to get a better look at the giant helping the fallen woman. Josiah knelt and carefully collected her belongings. His massive hands moved with surprising delicacy as he folded her torn dress. He retrieved each scattered letter and placed them back in the wooden box. An elderly woman approached from across the dusty street. Esther Sinclair moved with purpose, carrying a small cloth bag. She glanced around cautiously before kneeling beside Althea. "For the pain," Esther whispered, pressing herbs into Althea's palm. Winter approached with each passing day. Althea had no money, no shelter, and a newborn who depended entirely on her survival. Thorne's influence stretched throughout the territory like a spider's web. One word from him could close every door. The gentle giant extended his hand toward her. In his eyes, she saw something unexpected. Kindness existed in this harsh place after all. The general store's bell chimed as Althea pushed through the heavy wooden door. Her daughter slept peacefully in her arms, wrapped in a blanket Esther had provided. The store owner looked up from his ledger and immediately frowned. "We're not hiring," he said before Althea could speak. "I can work hard, I know numbers and can read well." The man shook his head firmly. "Thorne already came by, said your trouble." Althea's heart sank. She turned and walked back into the dusty street. The baby stirred but remained asleep. The saloon owner gave her the same response. So did the blacksmith. The seamstress barely looked up from her work before shaking her head. Word traveled fast in small towns, and Thorne's word carried weight. By midday, Althea had visited every business in Millbrook territory. Each door closed before she could properly state her case. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she pressed on. The baby needed food, and winter was coming. Josiah's ranch sat on a hill overlooking the town. The main house was modest but well-maintained. A large barn dominated the property, surrounded by sturdy fencing. Cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. "You can stay in the guest room," Josiah said simply, "until you find work." Althea hesitated. "People will talk. People already talk." The guest room was clean and comfortable. A real bed with fresh linens, a wash basin with clean water, a window that let in natural light. Althea hadn't seen such luxury in months. Esther arrived that evening with more herbs and a jar of honey. She examined Althea carefully, checking for signs of infection or complications from the birth. "You're healing well," Esther said quietly, "but you need rest." "I can't rest. I need work." Esther's weathered hands moved gently as she prepared a healing tea. Sometimes the body demands what the mind resists. Over the following days, Althea slowly regained her strength. Josiah never asked for anything in return. He brought meals without being asked. He repaired the baby's torn blanket with surprising skill. He spoke softly and moved carefully, as if aware that his size might intimidate. The townspeople noticed. Mrs. Patterson whispered to Mrs. Coleman at the church social. The blacksmith muttered to his apprentice about strange happenings at the Brooks place. The saloon buzzed with speculation every evening. "That giant's up to something," one patron declared. "Never did trust him," another agreed. "Man that size ain't natural." The rumors grew with each telling. Some claimed Josiah had threatened children. Others insisted he'd been seen prowling the town at night. Fear spread like wildfire through the community. Thorne heard every whisper. He smiled when Mrs. Patterson shared her concerns. He nodded gravely when the blacksmith expressed his worries. He positioned himself as the voice of reason in an increasingly nervous town. "I've been saying it for years," Thorne told anyone who would listen. "That man's dangerous. Now he's harboring undesirables." The word undesirables carried particular weight. Everyone understood its meaning without explanation. Lines were being drawn, and people chose sides based on fear rather than facts. Esther continued her secret visits to the ranch. She brought supplies and updates from town. The news grew worse each day. "They're organizing," she warned Althea. "Thorne's got them spooked." "What can we do?" Esther's eyes held worry. "Pray that cooler heads prevail." But cooler heads were in short supply. The town council received a formal petition demanding action. Citizens expressed concerns about public safety and community standards. The language was careful, but the intent was clear. Josiah seemed unsurprised by the developments. He went about his daily chores with calm determination. He fed his cattle, he repaired his fences, he chopped wood for the approaching winter. His routine never varied. "Aren't you worried?" Althea asked. "Worry changes nothing," he replied. Thorne made his move on a gray October morning. He rode up to the ranch with two other men. His horse pranced nervously as he called out from the yard. "Brooks, we need to talk." Josiah emerged from the barn. He wiped his hands on a cloth and walked slowly toward the mounted men. His massive frame cast a long shadow across the ground. "You're harboring a vagrant," Thorne announced. "Town council's concerned about the precedent." "She's a guest, not a vagrant." "Guest or not, decent folks are worried. Woman like that brings trouble." Althea watched from the window, her baby pressed against her chest. She could see the tension in Josiah's shoulders despite his calm exterior. "I'll be bringing this to a formal vote," Thorne continued. "Council meets tomorrow night. You'd best be there to answer questions." After Thorne left, an eerie quiet settled over the ranch. Josiah sat on the porch steps, his large hands clasped together. Althea joined him, still holding her daughter. "They'll vote against us," she said. "Probably." "Then why fight it?" Josiah looked out across his land. "Because sometimes fighting is the only choice left." That evening, Esther brought disturbing news. Thorne had lined up witnesses willing to testify about Josiah's threatening behavior. The testimony would be one-sided and damning. "He's got it all planned out," Esther said. "Make you both look dangerous." Althea felt the walls closing in. Tomorrow's meeting would determine everything. Her future, her daughter's safety, and Josiah's reputation all hung in the balance. The gentle giant had shown her kindness when no one else would. Now that kindness might destroy them both. The town hall filled beyond capacity. Every bench was occupied, with additional people standing along the walls. Oil lamps cast flickering shadows across tense faces. The air grew thick with nervous energy and whispered conversations. Thorne sat in the front row, flanked by his witnesses. He addressed carefully for the occasion, presenting himself as a respectable community leader. His supporters nodded approvingly when he caught their eyes. Josiah entered through the back door, his massive frame drawing immediate attention. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as heads turned to watch him navigate the crowded room. He found an empty space against the side wall and stood quietly with his arms at his sides. Althea followed moments later, carrying her sleeping daughter. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others craned their necks to get a better look at the woman who had caused such controversy. Council Chairman Morrison called the meeting to order. His gavel struck the wooden podium 3 sharp times. The room gradually fell silent. "We're here to address concerns about public safety and community standards," Morrison announced. "Mr. Thorne has requested this hearing." Thorne stood and straightened his vest. He had practiced this speech carefully, choosing each word for maximum impact. "Citizens of Millbrook Territory," he began, "we face a threat to our way of life." He gestured toward Josiah. "That man has been intimidating our neighbors. Mrs. Henderson saw him looming over her fence. Mr. Collins witnessed threatening behavior at the general store." Mrs. Henderson nodded vigorously from her seat. Mr. Collins raised his hand in confirmation. Both had agreed to support Thorne's version of events in exchange for favorable business arrangements. "Furthermore," Thorne continued, "he's harboring undesirable elements, people who don't share our values or respect our customs." The crowd stirred uneasily. Several people glanced toward Althea, who stood perfectly still despite the scrutiny. Thorne's voice rose with practiced indignation. "We cannot allow our community to be overrun by those who would disrupt our peaceful existence." Mrs. Henderson stood to speak. "My children are afraid to play outside. That giant watches our property from his hill." Mr. Collins joined her. "He blocked my path at the store, wouldn't let me pass until I agreed to his demands." More witnesses came forward with similar stories. Each account painted Josiah as an increasingly dangerous figure. The crowd's mood shifted toward fear and anger. Chairman Morrison addressed Josiah directly. "These are serious allegations. How do you respond?" Josiah's voice rumbled low and steady. "I've never threatened anyone, never blocked anyone's path, never made demands." "Your word against multiple witnesses," Morrison replied. "The council must consider community safety above all else." Thorne smiled triumphantly. The outcome seemed predetermined. Several council members had already made up their minds based on the testimony they had heard. "Unless there's additional evidence," Morrison said, "we'll proceed to a vote on whether Mr. Brooks poses a threat to public safety." Althea stepped forward from her position near the back. Her movement caught everyone's attention. The baby stirred in her arms but remained quiet. "I have something to say," she announced. Morrison looked surprised. "This hearing concerns Mr. Brooks, not you. The allegations concern both of us. I have a right to respond." Thorne's expression darkened. He had not planned for this complication. His witnesses had been prepared to testify about Josiah, not face questions from an articulate opponent. Althea walked slowly down the center aisle. Her posture was straight and confident despite the hostile stares from many in the crowd. She reached the front of the room and turned to face the assembly. "These charges are based on fear and prejudice, not facts," she began. Her voice carried clearly through the room. Several people leaned forward, surprised by her eloquence and educated speech patterns. "Mr. Collins claims Josiah blocked his path at the general store. I was present during that encounter. Mr. Collins dropped his packages, and Josiah helped him retrieve them. No threats were made." Collins shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His story suddenly seemed less certain under scrutiny. Althea continued with calm authority. "Mrs. Henderson claims Josiah was watching her property. His barn overlooks half the valley. He tends his cattle daily, which requires him to survey his land." Mrs. Henderson's confident nod wavered. Her interpretation of innocent activities now appeared foolish. "Furthermore," Althea said, These proceedings violate territorial law governing public hearings and due process. The room fell completely silent. No one had expected such legal knowledge from someone they had dismissed as insignificant. Chairman Morrison frowned. "What do you know about territorial law?" "I know that accusations require evidence, not speculation. I know that witnesses must be cross-examined. I know that the accused has a right to present a defense." Thorne stood abruptly. "Who is this woman to lecture us about law?" Althea met his gaze directly. "I am someone who received an education at Oberlin College in Ohio. Someone who studied law and constitutional rights. Someone who recognizes injustice when she sees it." The crowd erupted in surprised murmurs. Oberlin College was known for accepting students regardless of race or gender. Its graduates were educated to the same standards as any university in the country. Morrison struggled to maintain order. "That's quite a claim." "Easily verified," Althea replied. "I can recite the territorial statutes governing land rights, public assembly, and civil procedures." Thorne's face flushed red. His carefully orchestrated plan was unraveling before his eyes. The woman he had dismissed as powerless was systematically dismantling his case. Josiah watched from the side wall, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The gentle giant had always suspected there was more to Althea than others realized. The momentum in the room had completely shifted. Althea pulled a worn leather portfolio from beneath her shawl. The crowd watched as she opened it to reveal carefully preserved documents. College certificates, letters of recommendation, and legal papers filled the folder. "My teaching credentials from Oberlin," she said, displaying the documents. "I came west to establish a school for all children, regardless of their background." Chairman Morrison examined the papers closely. The official seals and signatures appeared authentic. The quality of the document surprised him. "I was robbed of my savings 3 months after arriving," Althea continued, "forced to work in the fields to survive. But I never stopped being an educator." Thorne's face grew darker. "Fancy papers don't change what she is. They prove what she is," a voice boomed from the side wall. Josiah stepped forward, his massive frame moving with deliberate purpose. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a thick bundle of papers tied with string. "I have documents too," he announced. The crowd stirred with fresh curiosity. The giant they feared was revealing yet another surprise. Josiah untied the bundle carefully. His large fingers handled the papers with practiced precision. Each document was numbered and organized in perfect order. "Land surveys for this entire territory," he said. "Property boundaries, water rights, and federal land grants. I've been mapping this region for 3 years." Morrison accepted the surveys and spread them across the podium. The detailed measurements and calculations covered every inch of the territory. The work was professional quality, far beyond what anyone expected from a simple rancher. "Who prepared these?" Morrison asked. "I did," Josiah replied. "I was a mathematics professor at Whitmore College in Kansas before coming here." The room erupted in shocked whispers. The dangerous giant was actually an educated academic. The revelation shattered every assumption about his character and intentions. Thorne jumped to his feet. "This is ridiculous. What does any of this have to do with the charges?" Josiah's deep voice carried absolute calm. "It has everything to do with them." He pointed to a specific section of his surveys. "These maps show property lines according to federal territorial law. Mr. Thorne's claimed boundaries exceed his legal holdings by approximately 200 acres. Althea moved closer to examine the documents. Her legal training allowed her to understand the implications immediately. "He's been occupying federal land illegally," she said. "Land that belongs to the United States government." Thorne's face went pale. His confident demeanor cracked as the scope of his exposure became clear. Josiah continued his methodical presentation. "The Homestead Act of 1862 limits individual claims to 160 acres. Mr. Thorne filed for 160 acres, but has been farming nearly 400. He produced additional documents from his bundle. Federal Land Office records, survey reports, and official correspondence painted a damning picture of systematic fraud. Furthermore, Josiah said, he's been charging other settlers for access to federal land that he doesn't own. The crowd turned to stare at Thorne, who stood frozen at the front of the room. His illegal activities were being exposed in methodical detail by the two people he had tried to destroy. Althea stepped forward with her own revelation. According to Territorial Statute 47B, illegal occupation of federal land constitutes a felony punishable by substantial fines and imprisonment. Morrison shuffled through both sets of documents. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Two educated minds had documented Thorne's crimes with precision and legal authority. "These are serious allegations," Morrison said weakly. "With serious evidence to support them," Althea replied. "Mr. Brooks' surveys are mathematically precise. The federal records speak for themselves." Josiah's academic background explained his meticulous record-keeping. Years of scholarly research had trained him to document everything with scientific accuracy. "I left teaching after false accusations destroyed my reputation," Josiah said quietly. "A jealous colleague claimed I was stealing research. The college dismissed me without proper investigation." His story paralleled Althea's own struggles against unfair treatment. Two qualified individuals had been reduced to frontier survival by the prejudices of others. "I came west to start over," Josiah continued, "but I never stopped being a scholar." Thorne finally found his voice. "This is all lies, forgeries, and fabrications." Althea smiled slightly. "Federal Land Office records can be verified by telegraph. Your own filed claims are public documents." The trap was complete. Thorne's illegal empire was crumbling under the weight of documented evidence. His influence meant nothing against federal law and mathematical precision. Several townspeople began whispering among themselves. They realized they had been manipulated by a criminal who used fear to hide his own illegal activities. Mrs. Henderson looked confused. "But the threats?" "There were no threats," Josiah said gently. "Only a large man trying to live peacefully while documenting the truth." Mr. Collins shifted nervously. His testimony now seemed foolish rather than brave. He had attacked an innocent academic based on appearance and rumors. Morrison struggled to regain control of the proceedings. "These revelations require further investigation." "They require immediate action," Althea corrected. "Federal agents should be notified of the land fraud immediately." Thorne backed toward the door, but several townspeople blocked his path. His former supporters now viewed him as a liability rather than a leader. The gentle giant and the educated mother had transformed a kangaroo court into a legitimate legal proceeding. Their combined knowledge exposed corruption and demanded justice. Esther Sinclair stepped forward from the crowd, carrying a small medical bag. Her weathered hands trembled slightly as she opened it to reveal additional documents. "I have evidence too," she said quietly. "Medical records spanning 5 years." The final piece of the puzzle was about to be revealed. Esther's medical records spread across the podium like pieces of an intricate puzzle. Each page documented injuries, illnesses, and treatments spanning 5 years. Her careful handwriting recorded dates, symptoms, and causes with clinical precision. 23 workers treated for suspicious injuries, Esther announced, all employed by Mr. Thorne at various times. Chairman Morrison examined the detailed entries: broken ribs from falls, cuts requiring stitches from accidents, burns from careless handling of equipment. The pattern was unmistakable. Maria Gonzalez, age 19, treated for facial bruising after questioning her wages, Esther read aloud. Thomas Murphy, age 42, dislocated shoulder following complaint about working conditions. The crowd listened in stunned silence. Esther had been secretly documenting Thorne's systematic abuse for years. Her position as the town's healer had given her access to evidence no one else possessed. Thorne's face had gone completely white. Those are private medical matters. She has no right to share them. Althea stepped forward with legal authority. Medical records can be disclosed when they document criminal activity. Territorial law specifically protects whistleblowing in cases of systematic abuse. Her college education proved invaluable once again. The legal framework supported Esther's decision to reveal the documented pattern of violence. More townspeople began speaking up from the crowd. Workers who had been too afraid to complain now found their voices. The evidence gave them courage to share their experiences. "He docked my pay for being sick," called out Samuel Wright. "Said I was faking to avoid work. Made my family work extra hours without payment," added Rebecca Foster. Claimed it was punishment for talking back. The testimonies poured forth like water through a broken dam. Years of suppressed grievances finally found expression in the safety of communal revelation. Josiah pulled out additional survey documents. The illegal land generated approximately $4,000 in unauthorized profits annually, he calculated. Federal authorities will want full restitution. Thorne's financial empire was built on stolen ground and exploited labor. The mathematical evidence supported every accusation with numerical precision. "This is persecution," Thorne shouted desperately. "You're all turning against me based on lies." Althea's voice cut through his protests with calm authority. "We're revealing truth based on documented evidence. There's a significant difference." The room's atmosphere had completely transformed. Fear and division were replaced by unity and purpose. The community was beginning to see itself as capable of justice rather than victimized by corruption. Morrison consulted with the other council members in hushed tones. The evidence was overwhelming, but the implications were staggering. Their entire understanding of local power structures had been shattered. "What do you propose we do?" Morrison asked helplessly. Althea exchanged glances with Josiah and Esther. The three had discussed this moment during their preparations. Rather than seeking revenge, they offered redemption. "Transform this territory into something better," Althea said. "Use the illegally occupied land to build a proper community." She outlined her vision with the passion of an educator. A school that welcomed all children. A medical clinic where Esther could practice openly. Fair employment opportunities regardless of background or appearance. "The federal land can be properly claimed through legal homestead applications," Josiah added. "Surveyed correctly and distributed fairly among legitimate settlers." His mathematical mind had already calculated the optimal divisions. Enough space for family farms, community buildings, and future growth. A planned settlement based on cooperation rather than exploitation. Esther nodded her agreement. "I can train other women in medical knowledge, create a network of healers serving the entire region." The three had evolved from victims into visionaries. Their combined expertise offered practical solutions rather than empty promises of change. Several townspeople began voicing support for the proposal. The idea of legitimate community development appealed to families who had lived under Thorne's shadow for too long. "What about him?" Morrison pointed toward Thorne, who stood cornered near the door. Althea considered the question carefully. Her education had taught her that justice required mercy alongside accountability. "Federal authorities will handle the land fraud charges," she said. "But Mr. Thorne can earn redemption through honest work." The proposal shocked everyone, including Thorne himself. Rather than seeking his destruction, Althea offered him a path toward rehabilitation. "He knows farming," she continued. "Let him work legitimately for fair wages. Prove he can contribute positively to the community he damaged." Josiah supported the merciful approach. "People can change if given proper motivation and opportunity." Thorne stared at them in disbelief. The people he had tried to destroy were offering him salvation instead of revenge. The gesture demonstrated a moral authority that his fear-based leadership had never possessed. "The choice is yours," Althea told him directly. "Face federal prosecution alone, or begin earning forgiveness through honest labor." Morrison called for a formal vote on the community development proposal. Hands rose throughout the room in overwhelming support. The vision of cooperative growth appealed to everyone except the corrupt. Thorne remained silent, processing the unexpected turn of events. His illegal empire had crumbled, but he had been offered an alternative to complete destruction. The meeting ended with committees forming to implement the changes. Education, medical services, land distribution, and community planning. People who had been divided by fear now united around shared goals. Althea held her sleeping daughter as the crowd dispersed. The baby would grow up in a very different world than the one that had rejected them both. The gentle giant, the educated mother, and the healing woman had transformed persecution into progress. 6 months later, the sound of children's laughter filled the air around Millbrook Territory's first official schoolhouse. Althea stood at the front of the classroom, pointing to mathematical equations written on a proper blackboard. Her daughter slept peacefully in a wooden cradle nearby, rocked gently by the autumn breeze through open windows. The school served 23 children from diverse families throughout the region. Former field workers' children sat beside shop owners' sons and daughters. The lesson plans made no distinctions based on background or appearance. "Sarah, can you solve this problem?" Althea asked. A young girl with braided hair approached the blackboard confidently. Mathematics had become her favorite subject under Althea's patient instruction. Through the window, Althea could see Josiah directing the construction of additional community buildings. His massive frame moved with purpose as he supervised the placement of support beams for Esther's new medical clinic. The federal investigation had concluded 3 months earlier. Government surveyors confirmed Josiah's mapping accuracy and verified the extent of illegal land occupation. Thorne faced substantial fines but avoided imprisonment by agreeing to make restitution through supervised labor. He worked quietly now in the community fields, earning honest wages under Josiah's watchful supervision. The prideful man who had once terrorized workers now learned humility through genuine physical labor. His transformation progressed slowly but steadily. Esther's medical practice flourished in its new official capacity. She had trained 4 local women in basic healing arts, creating a network of healthcare providers serving the expanding settlement. Her detailed records now documented recovery and wellness rather than systematic abuse. The afternoon school session ended with students filing out in cheerful groups. Althea gathered her materials while her daughter began stirring in the cradle. Motherhood and teaching blended seamlessly in the supportive community environment. Josiah appeared in the doorway, his large frame nearly filling the entrance. 6 months of respected community leadership had transformed his reputation completely. Children no longer feared the gentle giant, but sought his help with mathematics homework. "The surveyor finished marking the new family plots," he reported. 12 more homesteads ready for legitimate settlement. His precise calculations had divided the recovered federal land into optimal parcels. Each family received sufficient acreage for farming while preserving common areas for community use. Althea picked up her daughter and joined Josiah outside. The settlement bustled with productive activity as families prepared for the approaching winter. Smoke rose from chimneys, indicating warm homes and cooking fires. "Mrs. Henderson wants her youngest son to start school," Josiah mentioned. "Says you're the finest teacher she's ever met." The same woman who had testified against him now praised Althea's educational methods. Fear-based prejudices had given way to respect earned through demonstrated competence. They walked together toward the community center, where the evening council meeting would convene. Democratic governance had replaced Thorne's authoritarian control. Decisions were made collectively with input from all residents. The council had appointed Althea as the territory's first female magistrate the previous month. Her legal knowledge and moral authority made her the obvious choice for resolving disputes and interpreting territorial law. Esther joined them on the path, carrying her medical bag and a folder of training materials. 3 women from neighboring settlements had requested instruction in herbal medicine and basic medical procedures. The Martinez family welcomed their 3rd child today, Esther reported happily. Healthy delivery with no complications. Births in the new community were celebrations rather than sources of anxiety. Children represented hope and continuity instead of unwanted burdens on harsh employers. The council meeting addressed practical matters of winter preparation and spring expansion plans. Additional families had requested permission to establish homesteads within the growing settlement. Thorne attended the meeting as required by his restitution agreement. He listened quietly as others discussed community development. His participation remained limited, but his presence demonstrated acceptance of the new social order. Motion to approve the new medical training program, Morrison announced. All in favor. Hands rose throughout the room. Esther's proposal to expand healthcare education received unanimous support from residents who had experienced the benefits of accessible medical care. After the meeting, Althea and Josiah walked to his ranch under a canopy of autumn stars. Their partnership had evolved into deep mutual respect and affection. 2 educated individuals had found understanding in an unlikely place. The ranch house glowed warmly with lamplight. Josiah had prepared the evening meal while Althea taught her afternoon classes. Domestic cooperation replaced the isolation both had experienced in their previous lives. They spent the evening drafting the settlement's official charter. The document would legally establish their community's commitment to equality, education, and opportunity for all residents regardless of background. Article 7, Althea read aloud. No citizen shall face discrimination based on race, gender, or previous circumstances. All residents possess equal rights under territorial and federal law. Josiah smiled as he carefully copied the language in his precise handwriting. The charter would serve as their community's founding principle and lasting protection against future injustice. Late that night, Althea tucked her daughter into the small bed Josiah had crafted with his own hands. The baby girl would grow up in a world where her potential was limited only by her own dreams and determination. The gentle giant and the resilient teacher had created something precious from the ashes of persecution. Their community stood as proof that dignity, knowledge, and compassion could triumph over fear and hatred. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, justice had found its home in the unlikely partnership of 2 extraordinary individuals. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.